The seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Here we go. It's better late than never for the breakfast bar. Get used to it. It might happen a few times. We did have some technical glitches. I've not had a technical glitch in ages, apart from the odd time where I freeze on the screen and all that, David. But it's been a while since I've had these mad technical glitches. No cameras. Even my mouse stopped working at one point. So I thought I'll do the restart. And then it did a big update. So I'm guessing that's what it needed to do to fix itself. Anyway, better late than never. Welcome to episode 3 of The Breakfast Bar. There is 30 live already, which is astounding on a Wednesday morning. It is the 9th of November. David Logue, brilliant to have you back on the bus. How the devil are you, mate?
I'm doing great, man. This is class, man. It's 8:45 in the morning and we've got all these eager beavers online ready to listen to us talk about the hoops. So what is the day going to bring after this? Who knows? Who knows?
Well, that's it, mate. I mean, obviously today we've got a wee look ahead because we've got Motherwell again tonight in the SPFL. Obviously, we've got 2 more games before the World Cup break, which I'm kind of dreading, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if it came at the right time, but we'll look at the game itself as well, see what changes they make, try and attempt to predict some sort of lineup we could see Ange picking, but no one can do that these days. I would like to say it's going to become more definite what his lineup's going to be, but I actually think he's as unpredictable as ever, which, do you know what? That undeniably keeps all our opposition on their toes, which I definitely think is part of his plans to do all season. Before we get kicked off, it's time for all that good stuff. So if you are in the comments, please do hit the like button. It gets us more traction across YouTube. Do stay alive in the comments. We love the comments coming in. We'll bring up as many as we can. Obviously, do hit the subscribe button. We're up to 3,010, I think it is now, 3,009, something like that. So a big thank you to everyone who's done that. And of course, it's free. And if you want to become a Boycie Bus member, like so many of you have, which does help the bus run on more than just my fumes, then that would be brilliant as well. But totally optional. All the content remains free. David Ferguson, is this your jammies, Boycie? New tracky top. Jonathan got me for my birthday, David. I hope he's not watching. He'll be raging that you said that, mate.
You've got your hoopy slippers on.
David, I know the back pages will be dominated by Rangers news this morning. We're going to have a wee delve into that as well at some point. But I think they've released accounts in the morning for the first time in about 20 years. Normally they do it on a Friday night, do you know what I mean, when everyone's asleep. So they must
Oh,
be
must be good
sharing
then.
some good news or what they think's good news. I'm sure it'll still be taken apart in the Celtic blogosphere as actually it's really bad news. And I look forward to reading that because it always makes me feel better. I'm always like, yeah, I knew them posting profit meant they were going to go bust. Folk do read stuff like that and believe every word. And sometimes it just makes you, just tickles your balls a wee bit, mate. And you know I like a ball tickling. Right.
Especially at this time of the morning.
Can't go wrong, mate. Can't go wrong. Oh, I missed those days, mate. Missed those days. They're all over.
It's not post watershed yet, mate.
Robert Gibson, see, it started already. Dodgy accounts for breakfast. See, I had a feeling. I had a feeling there'd be a spin. Sometimes you read the back page, and we can't deny as well. I mean, I think the tabloids do enjoy putting a positive spin on it from them. So sometimes it is good to find yourself somewhere in the middle. I think if you read some of the blogs, they'll take you down a garden path that it means impending doom. And then if you read the tabloids, you would think Rangers had as much money as Man City. So it tends to be in the middle where you find the truth. And I'm sure more information about where Rangers are financial will come out as the day goes on. But yes, they seem to dominate the back pages. But I was enjoying listening to Ange yesterday, David. I mean, I don't think he likes doing these press conferences in Scotland. I really don't. He has a demeanor about him where if he can find a reason to disagree, even if he's agreeing with the journalist, then he'll find it. And I don't mind that because it's quite good to keep these guys at arm's length. I think sometimes one thing I was talking about with yourself was Ange has done his homework. Not just on where Celtic have went maybe wrong in Europe and stuff over the years, which is what the content your conversation was on the Sunday session. But I also think he's done his homework with how have Celtic been viewed in the media? Where are these guys? And I remember his first fan media press conference. The guy got ridiculed for it. Probably it went a bit too far, his ridiculing, and probably it wasn't the best opening question to Ange. This is going back to Ange's first ever presser. And he says, we're your friends, they're not your friends. And and I think he got a bit of stick, like, oh, he doesn't need that in his first press conference. But I wonder if now, when you look back, Ange might not seem interested when he's in these environments. But I wonder if he did go, okay, I had a feeling that was the case, but I'm going to look into that a wee bit more. And I think now you get the vibe when he's doing these pressers that that he's not going to tolerate any nonsense. I think one of the questions were, do Celtic have more confidence because they've got a 7-point gap there? Does that increase their confidence? And he's sort of saying, well, look, if we're getting confidence over the league table right now and other teams not doing as well, then that's not really confidence, is it? I don't think confidence comes into that at all. I like that. But I wanted to talk to you about the playing style because David, he's defended that again. He's defended it properly. He's done it from a position of winning as opposed to looking like, you're defending something after a defeat when really if we lost the game, sometimes people don't want to hear it. And he made quite a compelling argument, I've got to say. He speaks about, I'm going to paraphrase all this. I don't have notes or anything. It's not my style. But he basically said, we've had one way of playing. We believe, as he said before, it's the best way to win football matches. He says, but it was typified at the weekend because even if we're ahead, he goes, what we did at the weekend, he goes, people don't notice this, but we do that every week. Mm-hmm. We create those chances every week to the end. He goes, so it's no surprise to me that we got the 3 points because it just seems more obvious. We start pressing at the end when we're behind because you've got a dramatic event happening, such as a late winner and then a fourth goal for the icing on the cake. But what he was actually saying was, we play like this every week. There's a reason why we do it. I can't deny, whilst I've never once said part the bus or anything like that, I can't deny I've felt at times in Europe he could have been slightly more pragmatic at times in his 2 seasons in Europe. I think Leverkusen away last year, for example, 10 minutes to go, we're 2-1 up. But of course, Ange's principle is I won't change. I ain't changing. Now, often I've also looked at that as, and I've questioned it, not because I'm questioning it per se, but because I think it's good debate, David. I've said, well, if you only play one way, people know that then. That's that out in the open. That's something that people can then learn. But what he's also decided to do is he doesn't back down on it. He doubles down on it, David, because it's proven right. See, when you look back at that weekend, that is a weekend where, again, you can say St Johnstone, Hearts, etc. I get this, but I just felt at the weekend there when things were maybe a wee bit more pedestrian. Not all Celtic's fault. You talked about VAR very well, but that we never stop mantra. That all we do is play attacking football. We're going to create chances right then. He was totally vindicated with how his style of play is at the weekend, David. That's why we got the 3 points at the end of the day. So you've got to pay respect to that. And I was quite glad that he chose after a victory, obviously in the lead up to another game, but after the victory to sort of highlight that we do that every week. You're only noticing it more because it was a late winner. What do you make of that sort of rhetoric, Frange?
No, I when I heard him say that, I couldn't agree more, I suppose. He's totally right. You know, I'd like to see on paper how many goals we've scored in the last maybe 4 or 5 minutes of our game, because like you said, we do this all the time, but it gets lost in the shuffle if we're already winning quite comfortably. So obviously it highlights it a lot more when we concede a late equaliser, and when we go on to score another 2 goals, there was no real panic in the stadium from what I gathered. Just what was translated across on the telly, and granted it was obviously just on Sports Scene because I didn't manage to see the game. But from what Big Sir Phil and Mark and that had said when they were at the game, that there was no real sense of panic. Certainly not from the players. 5 minutes, or what was it, 4 minutes left of ordinary time plus a half hour of VAR time to get added on. There was the players felt that was enough time to score the winner and just get a nice wee chip as an added bonus. Ange's philosophy, he said it umpteen times. This is the way I believe is the best way to win football matches. Granted, not in Europe yet.
I know.
Not in Europe yet, but this whole constant wave after wave of attack, and just but a wave of attack that has a sense of calmness about it. It's like from our side, obviously.
Yep.
Because
there's not like the same way. They're playing the same.
There's not a frantic feel about it in the last 5 minutes of a game. It just feels very calm. Just play away. We'll create another 4 or 5 chances in these next couple of minutes. Hopefully, Giakoumakis, Kyogo, Jota, whoever is going to be on the end of it will get there. The whole it's just one style of football is an interesting one, because it is easy to say, I suppose, but once somebody figures out what you're doing and know how to and figure out a way how to stop it, it's all fine and well knowing how to stop it. It's can you stop it? And right now, I don't think
he's asking, isn't it? Yeah, that's
good. You know what to do to stop us, but have you got it in you to stop us? Because I don't think anyone in the league is able to stop us the way we're playing just now. I'm fairly confident. I'm not going to say the league's wrapped up yet, and Ange certainly won't say that. I mean, we just have to look back at last season, at this time last season, where we were, what was it, 7 or 8 points? We were behind at one point, and they were saying that the league was over. Ange's no daft, he knows, and the players aren't daft either. They're very grounded. I remember when Jota was being asked about that, and he was laughing at me like, "You just need to calm down." Like, it's very, it's all been, everything's been the mindset that Ange's brought to the team isn't just we don't stop. It's we don't get complacent. We never look. We never stop looking behind as well. We always need to keep looking over our shoulder and just keeping the guys behind us at arm's reach. Arm's length, should I say?
Arm's length. Arm's length. I know what you're saying, though. I know what you're saying, mate. And it's very much a case of that. I think you're right. There was a calmness at the weekend. And do you know what really, really encourages me for the 2 games before we go to the World Cup is that calmness. If we're that calm with X amount, 5-6 minutes or VAR minutes left, it could be anything. If we're that calm though, when it's 2-2 and we're potentially going to drop points, I think we go into these 2 games with that same level of calmness, but real confidence as well. Now,
Absolutely.
I like the fact that Ange, as I was touching on earlier, he was not relating that to the fact we're 7 points clear. He's doing it based on what he's seeing Celtic do. That's all well and good as well, and I'm all for that. I think that's absolutely fair. It is an exciting time right now though, because with the break coming up, whilst we are definitely going into it in a good place, during that break we're going to have this whatever it's called, the Ange Homecoming Tour, the Sydney Super Cup, Aussie Rules Cup, whatever you want to call it, David. But there's a big call we're hearing this morning. This is sort of news that's broke overnight. Scotland have a friendly away to Turkey, but Ange is prioritising friendlies, essentially the friendly tournament in Australia, for his Scottish players that potentially could have been called up. So like to Greg Taylor, David Turnbull, Ralston, James Forrest. I think they would have all been in contention, to say the least, David, that they could have been called up. Where'd you stand on that one? I think that'd be quite frustrating from a Steve Clarke point of view. Now, from ours is, 100% Celtic first. At the end of the day, Scotland playing in a meaningless friendly against Turkey changes nothing. It's not a Nations League game. It is an out-and-out friendly for the national team, which the Nations League and things like that do are nothing as it is, right? Obviously, I know it did lead to us qualifying for the Euros, the Nations League, and that's important for Scottish football to develop as well, because the revenue that you get for qualifying for these tournaments, I don't know if you've seen that when Scotland qualify for Euro 2020, it has a knock-on effect, not just from a Celtic prism, but improving Scottish football in general. We talk about the coefficient a lot, David. We want that to improve, because it can't just be Celtic or Rangers carrying the can for bringing up coefficient points year on year. If one of them have a dud year and go out in a playoff round or a qualifier, who else is stepping up to gain us coefficient points? So that can all improve if more money is going into the Scottish game. To do that, you have to be qualifying for international tournaments. However, Ange's viewed this friendly in Turkey clearly as maybe a step too far for him for the international stuff. If one of the boys are going to get injured, he'd rather be under his watch than his frustration. Where do you stand on it?
I'm totally with Ange. I'm totally in Ange's corner, because,
Yep,
like you say, the friendly against Turkey, I'm sure the boys will always be proud to pull on the Scotland shirt. But let's go through that list of boys again. James Forrest, David Turnbull, Anthony Ralston, who was Callum McGregor's injured, Greg Taylor. Right, which one of them is a starter for Scotland?
Yeah, true.
None of them.
True.
So unless Ange just sat Steve Clarke down on the phone and was like, right, Steve, what's the guarantees that these boys are going to even get some game time out there? So and obviously, let's not be around the bush. It's a meaningless friendly. Nobody. I don't know anybody that I speak to.
I forgot.
And I speak to a lot of folk that give a shit about international friendlies. I actually had a conversation with a boy yesterday, funny enough. Sorry, Monday, saying that obviously I was like, "You looking forward to the World Cup?" I am. He goes, "But Kim, what we just need to get rid of international friendlies. Just scrap them. They're just pointless. They're shite. They're just not entertaining whatsoever. They bring no benefit whatsoever." Like, so I think Ange's on that mindset. He doesn't. We've got £6 million. We've got a £6 million contract to take our Celtic superstars that aren't being called up to the World Cup to play in front of our Celtic fans in Australia. There's a written agreement, Polly, written there. Now, Ange is maybe saying, "Listen, Steve, like, we've got this cup, this Aussie Cup glamour tag. Yes, it's a friendly, but it's fully benefits Celtic. It was organised last year, way before this ran all this Turkey. Since we're not getting to go to the party over in Qatar, so let's just have our own party that nobody really wants to go to." Like, so I'm totally on Ange's side there. If they're not going to get any real benefit okay, you could say, but they're getting to go with the national side and maybe impress to then get into the Scotland starting 11 for the real deal. But these boys can't get in on merit as it is when they're sweeping up domestic titles for years. David Turnbull's been touted as one of the best young upcoming Scotland players for the last few years. Maybe not so much recently. He still couldn't get in a game that after Scotland had been knocked out. James Forrest is probably past getting an international game anyway. Greg Taylor's got Andy Robertson. He's got Kieran Tierney. He's got Aaron Hickey. He's got, and the same goes with Anthony Ralston, because these boys can play. So there's no real need for them to go to Turkey. So if Celtic can avoid them going out there and possibly getting halved by some Turkish unit, or just who knows what happens in training. Like Ange will probably have a completely different style of training to Steve Clarke does. How frustrating is that going to be if Greg Taylor pulls up a hammy or something? Like, Greg Taylor's one of our most important players this year for Celtic. Who doesn't get a look in for Scotland, and he gets injured in international duty playing a friendly against Turkey. It's just not worth it.
No,
we'll just have to take the slack. We always do. So
I see it though. I do see there being a wee bit of a backlash on that, but that's okay, because I'm actually with you on this one. I totally agree. I think Ange's doing the right thing. See, if it were me and we're playing friendlies for Celtic that are generating the football club around £6 million. I think Brown Warrior was in calling it we've paid for Jota or CCV Cup, either one. That's what it's covering the cost of, really. I mean, it's incredible. Then that's putting our interests first. I don't see anything wrong with that. I also think from a sporting point of view, if you're a football manager, I think you can handle seeing your own player on duty for yourself, whether it be a friendly tournament or not, picking up a knock, because it's been under your watch, if you like, right? It's been whilst I did play him, that extra 10 minutes, and you can answer to yourself a lot easier than there being a lot of unknowns, which would be obviously the case. Well, why the fuck was he still on the park? Why did you bring him on for the last 5 minutes against Turkey? And you're not in control then of that situation, which leads to further frustration and can 100% lead to then more conflict going forward between national team boss and Celtic manager. And we've had that in the past, with players being pulled out and things like that. So it is something that I'm on Ange's side very much with. The other question I was going to ask you, how do you think the players feel? Do you think the players are happier to go with Celtic than they are with Scotland?
That's an interesting one, because when you look at it, I don't know what these guys' mindsets work like, but let's say an Anthony Ralston that was playing out his skin last year, arguably one of the best right back in the country at one point, couldn't get a look in for Scotland.
Yep.
The only reason he finally got a look in at Scotland was due to, I think there was 2 injuries, and he got on at left back against Denmark for the last 15 minutes. It's one of does he have that attitude? It's like, oh, fuck them, I'm playing at my skin, I still don't get picked. Like, fuck him, fuck Steve Clarke. Is that his attitude? Or is it a case of, oh man, if I don't go, am I ever going to get a call up for Scotland? It's a difficult one.
Does it push me further down the pecking order? Is that what you mean? I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's that, it's like putting the kid in the middle of going, well, you can stay at your dad this weekend if you like, but man, it's like the split up parents scenario. It's like, it's not that I don't love you, Dad, but I can't go because Mum's not letting me.
Well, Ange's take on it was, he basically said, and this is the difference, because remember as well, see, even if it's a Nations League game, David, remember that if you don't release a player or a player refuses to be called up, they then miss their next club competitive game. I think it happened with Kyle Lafferty. So of course, though, Ange is all over it, because this isn't one of those occasions. This is just a friendly. The international games coming up are not compulsory for us to release players. From our perspective, the Australian trip is an important part of our club, and we want to take our strongest possible team. We'll always be supportive of the national team and Steve Clarke, He has been great in terms of his relationship with the club, but all of our players who are not going to the World Cup will be coming with us. We're obviously taking a team to Australia. People have bought tickets and want to see the best possible Celtic side there. I find it hard to argue with any of that. I think that's spot on. Now, it is a rare loophole because obviously this was happening all the time, David, right, with friendlies, that the players were withdrawing or they were picking up injuries and all that bullshit, right? My Neil Lennon inverted commas. And what's actually happened now is they created the Nations League to combat that, so that the games had a competitive element to them, and therefore it could be sort of imposed unless you're retired from international football or injured, you've got to be or suspended, you've got to be in that squad if you're called up to it. And if you're not, you miss your club's next competitive game. This is different. Ange's making the most of it. He knows it's different. And he's also saying, this isn't just Scotland players. This is across the board. And I think he does have a duty as well, where the club's bringing in this revenue from the Sydney Super Cup, Ange Homecoming Tour, whatever you want to call it. I think, or Ange Vanity Tour, I think Bob McBob's calling it in the comments. But I think either way, if we are going to a tournament that is going to have grounds packed to the rafters, you know what I mean, that have got 50,000 plus in them, we've got to treat that with a wee bit of respect as well, don't we? At the end of the day as well, Celtic pay these players wages. This is part of this is part of your in contract time. It's not a holiday time because there's a World Cup on. We have decided we're going to Australia. You're coming with us. You're not going to a friendly. If it was a Nations League game, we wouldn't have booked the tournament at the same time. So I think he's got them on strings as per. And I think those quotes there that I've just read out to you pretty much settle that one.
See the I'm not very good with the international calendar. See if there wasn't a World Cup going on at the date that they obviously want to do the Turkey-Scotland game. Would there be an international friendly going on at that time anyway? They would.
I reckon now there would be I think there'd be qualifiers. I'm sure last November there was a 2 or 3 game qualifiers around this time. Somebody correct me.
Right, okay.
The comments.
Right, yeah, if somebody knows that in the comments, just
there is.
see that would be a different scenario. That'd be a different scenario. They wouldn't have booked the Australian Cup though, because like you said, there was no international fixture for the Aussie Cup to worry about. But yet, like I said, I think it's all quite. I'm sure there'll be some sort of contractual situation there that, listen, we want you to bring Celtic over. We'll do the Sydney Cup, but any of the boys that aren't going to the World Cup, we want to see the big stars. Like you say, could you imagine you live in Australia, which hopefully some of the viewers on this morning will be from. You've bought your ticket to watch Glasgow Celtic. You've never been able to see them live in person, and you're hearing the likes, the Greg Taylor, one of the top players this year, is going to be coming, and Callum McGregor, if he was fit, was coming, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, listen, they're going to actually, they're not coming now because we've got an international friendly, but it's fine. You'll see the likes of guys that you've never heard of getting a kick about. So don't worry, you'll still get. You're not wanting the tribute act. You want the real deal, and you'd rather they were over there and they've got that really important international friendly against Turkey.
Yep. Speaking of call-ups, David. Speaking of call-ups, we'll move on to who has been called up and who hasn't so far. Obviously, there was a few eyebrows raised with the Japanese call-ups. We thought Kyogo and Atati. I mean, Atati looks a baller to me, but they obviously, as we said, our ignorance means that we don't always know. We don't always know how much other quality Japanese players there are. And it looks like they've actually kind of the vast bulk of them are already playing their trade in a lot of them bigger European leagues than the SPFL. So obviously it's quite tough to get in that squad. And fair play to Maeda for being the man who was selected. Aaron Moy chosen as well. I think that was getting a lot of press. I think he was at the forefront of the Australian poster announcing the squad. Fair play to him. Obviously, there could be other inclusions. Cameron Carter-Vickers. I remember I used to love the World Cup. Henrik Larsson would be there. Do you know what I mean? Mialbe, Valharin. I'm trying to think. There was plenty. There used to be, back in the day. This time around, will you be keeping an eye on the games with a different lens, David, if there's a Celtic player involved? Player cam, if you will. Is that something that piques your interest? Or if you hear how they've got on, are you quite all right with that? I know, obviously, you work a lot, so they are. But I think with the games, it does pique my interest. I mean, I think, for example, if Japan are playing whoever it is in their group, and you're watching at the start, you see Maeda in the lineup, I definitely think that increases your interest level. Moy, not for me, because I don't think he'll be at Celtic much longer. Just my opinion. I don't think he's part of the future. I wouldn't pique my interest, not because there's a personal agenda, just because I don't get that same excitement. I don't have that same intrigue. Probably because I've seen him loads in the past in the English Premier League and stuff as well at high level tournaments. But the likes of Maeda or I'm joking. You're gonna get me thrown off the airwaves. Some breakfast show. That's us done. It's a wrap.
Sorry, I'm
personal vendettas. But I would definitely say that, like, if Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think the USA squad's called up today. I mean, I would definitely be watching those games if he was in the team, like, with real intrigue to see how he gets on. Because
I'm looking forward to watching them play, man. I'm looking forward to watching the USA play. They're a different breed. They're not. This might sound ignorant, but I don't think they're the most technically gifted side in the world. But they're just athletes, man. These American guys just run. They're units, man. Look at Carter-Vickers, and I mean they had a few. They took a few scalps at the last World Cup, so that really piqued the Americans' interest in soccer. I know the women's side are like one of the best in the world, but the men's side have never really been like had a massive support from their nation. But I think this year's going to be really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if Carter-Vickers gets called up. To answer your question, because sorry, I did cut you off there. Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. Don't worry about that.
I was really looking forward to watching Japan because I thought it was a stick on that Kyogo, and I thought Hatate would at least get a call, but I didn't know if he'd be a starter because I was aware that if you look at that midfield, when you look at when they break down obviously the squad and in the positions, that midfield's littered with top, like you said, players that are playing in really good, stronger leagues in the SPFL. Like especially Germany, I think the Germans really do rate the Japanese lads. So Hatate was always going to be maybe a difficult one. Just we have to remember Hatate's only in his third professional year of football. Like he's 25 years old, but he's only played 3 years of actual professional football, which is madness. You got to take that into consideration. You can maybe understand why he hasn't been called up this time round. He's probably the midfield for the future, the player for the future for the national side. Kyogo's a funny one because obviously he didn't get called up originally.
Yep.
And then they've had a player pull out of injured, and Kyogo still hasn't been picked. They've picked like a 21-year-old lad that scored 3 goals this season. I seen it on Twitter last night that he's been called up now instead because that other boy's just not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't get my head around that. Now you're only picking, I think, 3 attackers, so that and one of them's Maeda, because I think Maeda plays as a striker for Japan.
Yeah,
Maeda must bring something to that national side that the manager likes.
Yeah.
Probably just that bluster and pace that he has, but surely Kyogo must be sitting there going, what did I need to do to get into that side? I'm Celtic's top goal scorer this season. I was on fire last season, and you've picked a boy who is not a guaranteed starter every week and doesn't score anywhere near the same goals as he does. Granted, he's out on the left wing or the right wing most of the time. But now that there's only going to be Maeda, I'm not going to say I'm not as fussed as watching. I've not got the same amount of interest as I would have had if there was more of the boys in that squad. Yes, it's good for us that Kyogo's not going. I think he's going to have a real chip on his shoulder now and really need to, because he's 26, 27. He's 27. Probably got one more World Cup if you're lucky to get into. So we might see Kyogo really turn it on now with a point to prove, but maybe a little too little too late for his national manager.
No, I think you've summed that up pretty well. I mean, I think the thing is as well, it's very strange that, you know, we've got, and naturally we do, but we get a backup when people are ignorant to the quality that we think could be in our league or the standing of our league. But likewise, I think we replicate that when it comes to other national sides like Japan. We were blown away that these guys from Japan were as good as what they are, but it's just really because of a lack of knowledge on our part of that sort of that league, that market. And then we're shocked that Ataki's not in, or Kyogo in particular is not in. Well, let's see what these boys that are in their squad, you know, what they're made of, and maybe it'll all make sense. I also think, in answer to one of the questions, what does Kyogo need to do? I think his Champions League campaign would have been his make or break. He was clearly, I would have thought, someone that the manager would be considering. Let's be fair here. He wouldn't have been, oh, he's got no chance of getting in. I think Kyogo would have been very much on that 50-50. I think he sticks away one or two of the chances that he probably thinks he should have now with hindsight, and or just any other chance. If he just scores a couple of goals in those 6 games, I think it would be a very difficult situation to leave him out on the back of that if you've got a guy scoring in the Champions League. But again, ignorance is bliss. We look forward to seeing what quality Japan bring, and if Daisen Maeda gets a regular start, I will love to see what he can do at the World Cup and see him bombing about. You know, that'd be brilliant.
As a striker as well, because I'm sure from what I gather, I don't think when Kyogo has been called up in the lead up to the World Cup campaign, I don't think he's been that prolific for Japan.
Right. Okay.
But I'm pretty sure I seen Maeda had scored a couple of goals, so that could be the reason why he's picked Maeda ahead of Kyogo, because he's doing it because Maeda's maybe doing it for his country, and Kyogo just at the minute isn't. He's not really replicated his form for Celtic, for Japan as he had been doing for Celtic. They've got a tough group though. I'm sure they've got Spain. I think they've got Spain in their group, but I couldn't tell you who else they have. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Maeda fares because like I'm pretty sure like he plays as a striker for Japan, so it'll be interesting to see how he.
David. Slightly non-Celtic. Where's your moral compass in the World Cup? What do you make of it being in Qatar? I know this is quite Celtic, but I also think Celtic's a club that is steeped in its sort of political beliefs. I think it's, you know, it is a club that is definitely one that supports the likes of, you know, the atrocities in Palestine and things like that, you know, and very vocal about it. I think, you know, when you look at I've got a strange debate, you know, in my head about the World Cup in Qatar. It doesn't sit well with me, I'll be honest to you.
No.
But my other opinion on it, and it might not be the most popular in the world, is I think when you see media outlets or people trying to make a name for themselves in the media, whether it be, you know, political broadcasters or sports broadcasters, wanting, you know, what do they want the players to do here? Pull out? I mean, I think on a sporting level, you get a chance, as you touched on earlier, to play in a World Cup once every 4 years. What are they meant to say? Oh, no, because of the human rights sort of issues. But what I would combine that with is I'm surprised there wasn't a stronger movement to say no to this World Cup. You know, guys were dying, mate. Do you know what I mean? Building the stadiums these guys are going to play in. Do you know what I mean? That is absolutely disgraceful. And that's only one of many questionable human rights natures. Not that I particularly think, you know, sitting here in the West, you know, some of the atrocities we've been a part of, not that we've wanted, but have been you know, necessarily us, but that we've been a part of, are there, should be playing judge and jury with everything that goes on in other countries. But I think it's an interesting one that a World Cup's going ahead. We've moved all the goalposts for it as well. It's the first ever World Cup not held in, you know, traditional summertime. It's being held mid-season for the majority of the countries. We've kind of bent over backwards to have this in a country that has got questionable sort of beliefs. But again, I don't think that sort of responsibility can be put on, you know, the footballers, the managers. I mean, they're there to do a job, right? And you know, on a sporting level, this might be your only World Cup you ever play. You've got to go, right? You've got to go. But are you surprised maybe the FAs, that, you know, the National Football Associations didn't turn around sooner and sort of raise their sort of apprehension and their sort of, what we doing going here to do this? I don't care. Apparently yesterday Sepp Blatters came out and said he doesn't even
They
think
would
the
have done
World Cup should go there. I mean, the irony of that is that's just beyond parody. That is.
The thing with this World Cup is it's been built on bribes and blood money. And unfortunately, to put that on the players, it's not fair to ask a player. Let's take Harry Kane, for example, the England captain, who is being ridiculed by some parts of the media for not saying more. But like you say, he's just a professional football player. Yes, he does inherit responsibilities of being an example to young people and stuff, on how he presents himself and represents his country and blah 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 blah. But to ask him to then go up against a nation and FIFA, and try and call out and say to them that no, we're not. This isn't right, and we're not going to do it.
Yep.
That's fine, but you need everybody on board with that to make that that kind of statement. It's a difficult one. I'm not particularly bothered about this year's World Cup. Like, I'm not as excited as I would be, probably because of the time that it's happening. It's interrupting our season and everything. But I will watch games because you're asking people who have just got their job is just to play football. That's their job, and they work and they play, and their countries have qualified for a World Cup, and that just so happens to be in Qatar. We all know why it's in Qatar, and if once that was kind of proven, and I'm pretty sure it was proven to be bribes and stuff, then this should have been scrapped. But then there's people, like you say, that have died building these stadiums. Then they've died for nothing. They've built stadiums. They've been a part of building stadiums, and then they turn around and say, well, we're not actually going to play in Qatar. And say, well, these guys have built stadiums for no reason, and they've died doing it. The human rights aspect, that country's there's so much. It's a difficult conversation to have because morally, it's just not. It's not right. But they're asking us to respect their culture. But I'm sorry, their culture's backwards. Their culture's hundreds of years behind. And with the way they treat women, the way they treat people of different race, their sexuality, and we need to use this as a world platform to maybe educate these guys. Now, I know I'm going to throw this out here as an example, and I know this might bore the tears out of a lot of you guys. As people know, they've watched us long enough, like Phil and myself, and there's a couple of guys, we like the wrestling, we like WWE, right? Now, they've had a lot of stick over the years because Vince is no longer in charge of the company. It was taking a lot of money from the Saudi Arabians to go over to Saudi to wrestle when they wouldn't allow women on the show. They don't allow certain wrestlers on the show because of their religious beliefs.
Wow.
Now, some of these, but so the wrestlers are in the same situation as the footballers, is they're getting paid a lot of money to go. Well, the company's getting paid a lot of money that they work for to go over to a country that they don't believe in their political views and their human rights views to go out there. But they've been given, but at the same time, the company's also given a lot of the guys the option not to go, and some of them chose not to go. Some of them for their own safety, and some of them just because of their moral compass. Now, but we still, as wrestling fans, we still watched it. Didn't agree with it, and it's one of those ones. It's like, well, if you didn't agree with it, you shouldn't have watched it. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan of that sport, or a fan of that entertainment, if you want to call it that. It's the same with the football. I'm still morally against the fact that it's in Qatar, but I'm a fan of football, and I'm going to watch it. It's a difficult one. It is a real difficult one, and it does play on your moral compass a bit. But if we'd all together went, no, we're not watching it, then maybe it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something that we're sort of. you're compromised a bit because you know what you're watching is dirty money in front of you. You're watching, you know, how are they playing in that stadium? Well, you know, because X amount of people died doing 48-hour shifts and things like that, and searing heat, dehydrated. I mean, stuff like that's just, it's criminal. It's just not right. But again, I think once the ball's kicked off, it's going to happen. It's going to go ahead, and it'll be interesting to see because there's a lot of negativity for the World Cup coming through in the comments, and I respect everyone's opinion on that. I really do. And I've seen it being, it's something I'm really just like, I don't know why it got to this stage. And yeah, of course, David Ferguson saying, 2 weeks ahead of it's a bit rich, so for people to complain about it, they've known for 12 years. That was the point I was kind of making. I was saying, I'm surprised the football associations didn't, collide their minds, a wee bit earlier than that and go, right, okay, this isn't going to look good. This ain't right. We now know how they've got to this. They've arrived at this destination as well through bribes, etc. Let's just en masse sign a petition, 10, 15 countries sign it, 20 countries, however many it may be, probably most of them, and we'll pull out. Australia, interestingly, had 16 players did a video in October, and they were sort of questioning the human rights and things like that over there. Are Australia going to be, David, everyone's second team or everyone's first teams in Scotland, aren't there? 7 players, I believe, called up from the SPFL. I read.
Martin Boyle, one of them, and a couple of other guys from Hibs, I think, and Hearts as well.
I think the Rock, is it that? I can't remember. And then there's other Scottish links as well. Jason Cumming, I think, made it.
He did, yeah.
James McLaren, he used to play for Hibs. Jackson Irvine, who was at Celtic, and then, of course, has went on to have a pretty good career down south.
St. Pauli as well, wasn't he?
I think that's what it is. I know the Celtic links go on, mate. But it's an interesting one. But I wonder if Australia, especially the Ange effect, I think there'll be a lot of people supporting the Socceroos, don't you? Yeah,
I think so. Like this, it's one of those ones I've never been fussed about watching Australia. Like they've never, like you said, they've never been much of a soccer nation. The Socceroos. I will watch it because I'm just intrigued to see Jason Cummings go up against France. It's going to be
good luck, mate.
giving it all that when he scores against France. Like you say, a lot of Scottish-based players. So you're probably right. I think we're a few fans of Hibs and obviously Celtic and. I think there's a couple of Hearts guys in that lineup as well. So it will be that will probably peak Manchester this year. To be fair, I don't think they're going to do very well, but we'll hope that they can maybe get 1 or 2 scalps. The World Cup always brings up a couple of shock results from random sort of smaller nation footballing wise. Anyway, so we might see Australia get something out of that because they look. We'll look up for it.
And we've got loads of Aussies who watch the bus as well, so it'll be interesting to see their excitement's peak as well, David, during the tournament. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, before we head off, we've got a big game tonight. We'll be doing some post-match picks later. We'll have a wee look ahead to Motherwell Celtic. Last 10 meetings, David. How many have Motherwell won? 0. How many draws have they had? 0. This is the stat that really blew me away, thanks to BBC Sports News. 55 midweek games Celtic have played domestically, unbeaten. Now, that's fucking mental. How far back does that run go? 55 midweek domestic games unbeaten.
That's wild, isn't it? I didn't know that stat. That's crazy.
I've deliberately read it on the BBC site earlier. But I find that, I think tonight we go in with proper confidence, don't we?
I'd like to think so. Was it you guys that were saying that Motherwell have said to have the best pitch to play on at the minute? So that only
best surface in Scotland. Best
surface in Scotland. So that suits us perfectly. I'm sure Ange will be buzzing about that. We can play our football. I think we're feeling fairly confident. It's that whole who's going to start up front scenario again. But I think the team picks itself. The nucleus of the team picks itself now that we've not got the European campaign that's in the back. I think when you look at the start of the season, we kind of thought that the team rotation would have happened. It'd been quite hard to predict the squad, but he almost picked the same squad almost every game up until we started playing, heading into the European campaign.
Mhm.
I think we've seen a lot more heavy rotation around the domestic games with Europe in mind.
Yeah,
And now
yeah,
that that's out the way, I think we're going to go back to sort of our main nucleus of the side. Obviously, not having Callum McGregor in the team changes it a little bit from the beginning of the season. But I think we're going to get a pretty predictable starting lineup going forward now. Like our strongest, I don't know, I keep doing that. Our strongest 11.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's a game I've got to say I'm very confident of. We are excited right now with 2 games to go to see what that gap could be at the top. Just before we go, I'm just going to quickly as well do a plug for the man behind the theme song, David. Brian
Yes.
Cattigan's got new music out. So Brian's obviously the man behind the which I know everyone loves it, man. But he's got a new song out. It's a slightly slower tempo, but it's called Hug Me Nae Poster. It was released on Friday. It'll be on his, on his Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. He's tried to capture the feeling of coming home to all your friends at the end of the year in the pub, having a sing along, and he hopes he's captured that in the music. But aye, do give it a look up. Brian Cattigan releases that on Friday, and obviously a big thanks to him as always for being the soundtrack to the Boycie bus. I wish I could play it, but unfortunately it's not out yet. And secondly, copyright just blows all that stuff out the water. We will be back for PMP. Someone's asking who's going to be on. Terry Robb's always invited on for PMP. He is the face of post-match pish. And not just him. Mark Spowert makes his long-awaited return. Mark was on, did the Double Doon show. I think he did one other show as well last season. But his content, his contributions are always really good. He's always been in the group chat. So he's coming back in, good mate of mine. And also, the Punk Duck Warlord's on tonight as well, all the way from Canada. He said in his message he missed Nostalgia on Friday because his broadband was playing up. So he let me know yesterday when I asked him to come on. He says, I'm Wi-Fi'd out my nut, mate. I will see you there.
Is it on the telly tonight? Is it on the telly?
No,
We're going to have
PPV. So again, it could be a stream or 15 quid for the pay-per-view. We will find a way to watch it, though. Don't worry about that. I'm on the Celtic tonight at Fir Park. I am confident. Let's get a wee score prediction from you, David.
I'm going to go 4-1.
4-1. I like it. I think it'll be a comfortable 2-0 tonight. I don't like to sound boring, but I think it'll just be, I think it's business now for Celtic. I think they're a wee bit disappointed what happened in the Champions League. Now it's just about getting 3 points. It'll be business as usual. Comfortable.
How many handball penalties? How many handball penalties do you reckon?
How many handball penalties? It's bingo now for that. Will there be a penalty tonight? It's definitely worth a bet. We look forward to more VAR controversies as well. David, a massive thanks to you for joining me on the Breakfast Bar. I'm going to start my shift at work. Thanks to each and every one of you in the comments. Can't believe how many of you have joined us again for episode 3 of the Breakfast Bar. We will be back this time next Wednesday, 8:30, hopefully not late. And I will see you all then. Cheers.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.